nuts and seeds, what, probably occasionally, maybe hardly at all? What have you seen?
You want to have them every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. It's in the Liver King bar. I have some almond butter that's in the Liver King bar, and I love how it tastes.
This is a video that a lot of people have been waiting for. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Brian Johnson, AKA Liver King. Here we go. All right, we are rocking. So this is an interview that I think my channel has been waiting for a long time. We've got the one and only Brian Johnson, AKA Liver King. What is going on, man?
I'm so excited to be spreading this message, and especially I know I reached out to you last week, and for you to have me on with such short notice, again, to be able to spread this message. This is everything to me right now. This is my purpose, my passion, like the reason why I exist now. So this is what's going on. I'm excited to be talking about the ancestral way of living. So thank you for having me on.
Heck yeah, man. No, it's a pleasure. I did that video on your sort of way of life, mainly your way of eating and fasting a couple of weeks ago. So sounds like you and your team saw that. So that's just awesome. If it worked as a catalyst to get you on the channel, then awesome. But I mainly wanted to be able to reinforce certain things about that we overlap on. There's a lot of things we overlap on. There's some things that we don't, but I think the main underlying message of what we were trying to spread of metabolic optimization and living close to the earth is very, very similar. So it just be good to have a cool conversation on that. And I want to give you a chance to sort of, in a relatively abbreviated fashion, walk us through the 9 ancestral tenets and walk us through what that means. And just as a heads up, I mean, some of the things I really want to focus on that I'm just excited to talk with you about are things that people haven't been talking with you about as much. Your training style. I'm super into that. I think that's one of the coolest things is your training style. And regardless of what kind of dietary pattern someone follows, I think that training style is epic in conjunction with the hormetic stressors you initiate from fasting and things like that. But yeah, man, I'll turn it over to you. What's just give me your sort of 60-second elevator pitch.
Yeah. So this is tough to talk about the 9 ancestral tenets in 60 seconds. So what I try and tell everybody, hey, if you're going to do one thing, eat liver, get liver into your life, because if you can pull that lever, if you can get liver in your life, you're going to have more energy. You're going to sleep better. Your mental acuity is going to be better. Your mood's going to be better. And when that happens, I say you start to become a primal. And when you become a primal, you can create and shape a life that you want to live in because everything is better. And this is what I tell everyone. If you can do that, you can become anything, even a king. So if you're going to start with anything, start with liver. But here are the 9 ancestral tenets. It's sleep, eat, move, shield, connect, cold, sun, fight, and bond. And these are the forces that have shaped us for millions of years. These are the forces that I believe that we still need today for us to express the highest and most dominant version of ourselves. And a lot of these things have been stripped away. Listen, we live in a modern world, right? And I get a lot of flack about, well, that's not very ancestral. Like I live in a big house. I drive a big car. Well, that's not very ancestral. I don't know if people think that I showed up one day on social media and said, hey, we should all go back in time and live in a cave. I never said that thing, right? Like what I say my mission is to put back in what the modern world left out. And my name is Liver King. Like, where do kings live? And by virtue of an evolutionary hunter, we left the comfort of the cave to create and shape a better life, a life that's full of adventure, excitement, and a better life. So there's this story of technology across time. So what I would say is these are the 9 ancestral tenets that have shaped us to become the baddest mammalian predators that ever lived. These were organized in a way that people could step by step start to adopt these 9 ancestral tenets, start with liver, and then you could move on to some of these other things. So I try not to go into all 9 at one time because, it's almost like going into a room and meeting 20 people at once. You're not going to remember all 20 people, or you keep giving like all this advice on a golf swing. By the way, I don't golf. I don't even know why I use that analogy. But I say start with liver, start with liver. And every morning I say, get early morning sun at the same time every single day. Connect with the earth. These are things that only take a minute. Do these things. These are our ancestral ways. And when people start to do these things, they start to notice something's different. And then they start to create momentum in their lives. And then they can start to eat better. Then they can start to feel better. And then they can start to think, okay, how far can I take this to become the best version of myself?
Heck yeah, man. And I feel like one of the things that is very important that needs to be said is that you're not necessarily suggesting that everyone lives every attribute of everything that you do on social media. I mean, you're suggesting start with this and see where it takes you.
That's, because nobody is going to go from 0 to 60 or 0 to 5,000. I didn't. What we first did, we did it for our kids out of medical necessity. We threw out all the processed crap, the liquid calories, the seed oils, and we started to bring in all whole foods, nose to tail, chiefly liver and bone marrow. So we just started with food, and we saw that radically change their lives. We saw that radically change our lives. And we said, okay, what's next? What else can we do? Maybe there's something to this ancestral way of living. And when we started to get more sun, when we started to ground, when we started to shield, and shield is sort of like, our early ancestors always had to protect themselves from danger. They had the lion. Now we got like the metaphorical lion. Like now we got our cell phone that's right next to our reproductive organs. We have Wi-Fi on 24/7. We got fluoride, we got mercury. I don't know if I should be saying these things on this sort of platform, but we're constantly surrounded by dangers that are compounding, and you're never gonna. And there's hundreds of them. And I don't say, hey, let's go tackle 100 of these. I say, let's just be cognizant of 2 or 3. Like, do you need your Wi-Fi on when you're sleeping? Do you need your cell phone on while you're sleeping? Just put those on it. Put the Wi-Fi on a timer. Put your cell phone in airplane mode while you sleep. These are little things you can do, right? Because it's about progress, not about perfection. If you can incrementally do these things, you will experience a better life. And when you experience a better life, you're going to say the same thing. How far can I take this for me? How far can I take this for my kids? How far can I take this for my friends? Because once you know this, you just want to share this with everybody. So this is what we're trying to do now. So absolutely, I'm not trying to say, hey, these are the 9 ancestral tenets, go live this way. What I tell everyone is, my name is Liver King because liver is king. Go start with liver. If you can get liver in your life and you start feeling better, then let's start paying attention to the other 9 ancestral tenets. Let's stack the sun and the earth every day. Let's start doing these things. Let's start lifting heavy shit, right? Let's start putting down the damn phone and turn inward and turn towards one another. And when you have a conversation with people like this, when you're loving and you're laughing and you're crying and you're feeling these emotions, all of this stuff is like food. It's like energy. This is for self-signaling. This is for hormone optimization. All 9 ancestral tenets shape our hormones, shape the information that we're interpreting so that we can express something. So this is absolutely correct. I'm not saying let's everyone needs to go and sleep on the floor. Like, I think Danny Gonzalez did this YouTube video. It was hilarious, where he tried to do all these things that he thinks that I'm doing. And he did a lot of them wrong, by the way, but it was a hilarious, insightful video. And I'm glad that he's able to spread the message. But this is not about going from 0 to 60. And by the way, if you try and go start sleeping on the floor tomorrow and you've been on a mattress, this is not working out for you, right? You need to put yourself maybe on a thin pad. And then after that, maybe you have 6 sheets, or 6 towels, and then you go to 5 towels, right? Because if you go straight to that, you're going to get bone bruises. So 100%, this is about making incremental progress. And then once you feel how incredible, life could be, well, now it's time to move on.
Today's video is brought to you by ButcherBox. One of the things that you will notice Brian and I talk about a lot on this video is going to be protein, prioritizing protein. Now, I'm not saying that this is an endorsement from Liver King. This is my endorsement. But ButcherBox has grass-fed, grass-finished beef, a bunch of other really high-quality meats that you get delivered to your doorstep. And I went ahead, I put a special link down below in the description. So if you're trying to get good grass-fed, grass-finished meat, you're trying to get it to your doorstep a lot easier, definitely recommend ButcherBox. And especially if you start looking at the prices and compare it to what you get in the grocery store, it ends up being a pretty good bargain. So that link is down below for ButcherBox. It's absolutely changed my life when it comes down to being able to get like grass-fed ribeyes or grass-fed New York steaks. Really just awesome quality stuff. Not to mention wild-caught seafood as well. Scallops, we're talking cod, we're talking salmon, good sockeye salmon that's got that deep red color because it's wild-caught. All the stuff that I talk about on my videos all the time, you can get through ButcherBox. Again, that link down below in the description, so that is a special link. And you can also check out some of the cuts that I've recommended in the past and things like that. So check out ButcherBox down below in the description. And just simply doing difficult things, right? I think the underlying message that I try to talk about a lot is there's a lot of different ways that people would potentially start. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing difficult things, you're not growing, period, right? In any category. And being able to test the waters with one difficult thing and seeing how you progress from that, that really starts looking at all these pillars of longevity that are being researched in all kinds of different research communities now. I mean, we're talking FOXO, we're talking sirtuin activation, all kinds of things that come from, guess what, hormetic stressors. And one of the things that I really, really have been interested in talking about lately and haven't had the right kind of video to explain it, and this is probably a perfect one, is you see this consistent comparison of, oh, well, the stress response that we get from today's life, potentially getting fired, this and that. I'm not discounting that could cause some stress in your life, but there's this message that is circulating that I don't agree with that says, hey, when you are exposed to these chronic stressors throughout life, in terms of, again, maybe you're going to get fired, or you're going to get audited by the IRS, or you're going to whatever, right? That's not the same, because they try to compare it to, oh, well, we used to just have one period of stress. Maybe we were being chased by a tiger, a saber-toothed tiger, and then we would be calmed down and everything would be fine. So our bodies have, quote unquote, adapted to these acute stressors, and then they come down. Well, now our bodies are bombarded with chronic stressors. I agree with the fact that it is a chronic stressor, but as someone that's been amongst tribal people and has seen this, it is a completely different discussion. If I was getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger, when that chase was done, I would not be calm, cool, and collected. I would be chronically stressed that saber-toothed tiger was going to find my den, was going to find my cave, So for us to compare, that is like apples to oranges. It is a completely different thing. I understand chronic stress of being in the corporate world. I was there before, but I will tell you, it is not comparable to what was happening thousands of years ago. It wasn't acute stressors and then all fine and dandy. Like we were not that naive. Our IQ was not that low. We were not that much of a inferior being that we would get chased by a tiger and then forget that it ever happened. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but our chronic stress of dealing with the corporate environment and things like that is not the same. It is a completely different thing. And a lot of the modern world wants to talk about and almost sort of, in a way, nurture and make everyone feel better about the fact that your lives are stressful. Well, your lives probably aren't as stressful as it was back then. So you're not having the same hormetic stressors. You're not having the same influences on your mind and on your body that make you more resilient. And then there's the discussion of, oh, well, if our ancestors had such a great way of living, then how come they had such a short lifespan? Well, okay, there was a lot of other external factors for one. And I don't know about you, but I came out of the healthcare world. I came out of the medical world. I'm not discounting modern healthcare. I think there is absolutely a place. But if we factor in the things that you're talking about and applying them along with what we know today, we could actually create some really cool stuff. Just like the fact that, yes, you live in a house. Yes, you drive a car. You're not going to start walking barefoot everywhere you go. Just get rid of your car. I think it's a bigger discussion that I'm glad you're doing longer form content to be able to explain.
The Machigenga tribe in the Amazon, their biggest concern is a neighboring tribe that's trying to kill them. That's always on the back of their mind, 100% of the time. This is what they are always looking over their shoulder for, that and the jaguar. When they go out on a hunt and they have a close call, they think it's hilarious. They know how to laugh. They got the deepest parasympathetic tone that you've ever seen. I don't know if you remember the last time you just spent the afternoon laughing and cracking up, maybe with your family, maybe with friends, but that's so incredibly renewing. This is what these people do every day. They know how to turn it on. They know when to be vigilant, and they know how to turn it off. And a lot of these things are sort of built into their way of living. So I do think that it's so incredibly important for us to continue to do hard things, right? If we don't do hard things, we're not going to stretch ourselves. If we don't stretch ourselves, we don't grow. And this goes across all capacities of life. The physical is easy for people to understand. But the same, I'm sure that you would agree, it happens emotionally, socially, spiritually. If we don't stretch ourselves and if we don't do the hard things, then we will cease to grow. And then we're going to be the same person tomorrow that we were today. You're going to be the same person in a year, in 5 years. And I think that's a catastrophic failure. Like, life is too good. Life continues to get better nonstop. But we have to willingly do the hard stuff across life. And then everything gets better. So I think that this is an important thing. And this is what I teach my kids to do. This is what my inner circle tribe does. If you can do the hard stuff now, then on the other side of that is real peace of mind, is real relaxation, is real enjoyment, is the ability to go into that deep parasympathetic tone, because not that long ago, you were in that fight or flight. And so when you don't have any sort of contrast, any juxtaposition, everything is flat, everything is the same. Like these are the peaks and valleys of life. But unfortunately, in the modern world, we don't really have the catalyst to create that saber-toothed tiger, that lion, the Machigenga's neighboring tribe. We got to do those things. We got to impose those things. And so this is a lot of the things on the 9 ancestral tenets. Number 8 tenet is fight. Men evolved hunting, fighting, persevering, struggling, overcoming, winning. And when you win, it sort of lives in a closed loop. You get rewarded with a boost of dopamines and androgens that cultivate more of the same. But we're not doing a whole lot of willing fighting like that. Like most people don't know their purpose, their passion, why they exist in life. Fighting happens physically, it happens intellectually, it happens, all capacities of life. We've got to embrace these ways. We've got to create these stressors so that we can overcome and grow and get better.
And when you create these stressors sort of in your conscious life, that's what I try to preach, is that making your conscious life, when you're thinking, which believe it or not, when you're actually really deciding on what you're going to do and your prefrontal cortexing your way through something, is a much smaller portion of your life than people might think. When you can consciously think of it, you should be making things difficult. I really do try to promote that. When you are thinking of it, make things difficult. And you made a mention of, okay, yeah, on the other side of that is euphoria, is this really great feeling and somewhat even bliss to a certain extent. But I try to look at it as, okay, when I'm conscious of it, I want to make things difficult. When I'm conscious of it, I'll take the stairs. When I'm conscious of it, so always being aware and having that top of mind. Because why? Not because it makes things easier in conscious thought later, because it should never be making things easier in conscious thought. In conscious thought, it should always be progressing and getting more difficult. But what it does do is it makes the background easier. The background times when you're not in conscious thought, when you're not thinking about the gains that you've made in terms of mental, emotional, physical, because that's 90% of your life is that unconscious time, right? When you're just walking around and you're not thinking of how can I make this a little bit more difficult right now? Oh, there's a bar right there. I'm going to go do some pull-ups. That's the way that I drop. Oh, I've got dead time right now and I'm thinking of it. I'm going to drop and do some push-ups. I'm going to move, right? But during those unconscious periods, when I'm holding my wife's hand and I'm walking down the street and I'm not thinking of it, that is when I get the benefit. But the downside of it is, guess what? You're not necessarily there consciously to receive it, but you certainly are at a cellular level. And that's where I look at it. And then if you do take the time to say, yeah, I'm going to step back and I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to step back and I'm going to feel these feelings of bliss and how much easier life is for this finite period of time. Great. But we also have to remember that the goal isn't to get it easier. And I feel like with hormetic stressors and some of the things I talk about with fasting and stuff like this, we talk about this element of mastery that comes with fasting, this element of control, of being able to feel like you are in charge, right? It's a great feeling that not a whole lot of people get to experience. But on the other side of it is not relative ease. It is if you interpret it as that. But I feel that if you interpret it as that, you're going down the wrong path. Part of life and life in general is the journey. It should continually be hard. If it's hard, you are freaking alive, man. Like that's it, right? I would rather have it be difficult and feel pain and feel pain when I'm 99 years old and I'm marching up the stairs. I don't care. At least it means I'm alive and I'm there, rather than have an easy life and be at 80 or 60 and feel like, well, this is it, right? So it's all about just embracing the suck. Pick your hard. It's all hard, because if you're overweight, it's hard. I've been there. If you're pre-diabetic, it's hard. If you can't move your body, it's hard. Or you can lift heavy shit and it can be hard. You can choose to eat things that may not be on your menu normally and it's hard, but at least you're living it, right?
I love all that. I say on Thursdays, you're going to suffer one way or another. You can actively suffer by earning that shit, by making it hard. And then you're going to grow and everything in life is going to get better. Or you can passively suffer, living the life you're already living. You're not earning anything. You go to a job that you hate. You come home to a life that you don't love. You take medications to feel better and to get hard. And you can't wait to do it all over again. You can't wait for Friday, really. And so the thing is, you're going to suffer one way or another. And if you can choose to do the hard shit now, if you can earn it, if you can suffer now actively, in a week, you're going to feel a lot better. In a month, things are going to be geometrically better. In a year, you can be anybody and do anything you want. But this does require paying the price. This requires actively saying, this is what I'm going to do today. And again, I'm sure that a lot of people like this, that their lives aren't good and they're trying different. I mean, let's face it. I think it's 80% of Westerners are overweight. There's a huge percent that are obese. There are metabolic conditions, neurologic conditions that are pandemic, endemic today in kids. There's a better way forward. And a lot of those things that are required in order to go forward, well, these things aren't easy to do. And this is why I try and start with the easiest thing. I'm like, you know what? You want one thing, start eating liver. Start that immediately. But we're going to get into the hard stuff. There's always been thermal pressures. And getting really hot, getting really cold. I think that these acute hermetic stresses are really important to go through. And they are so hard. I do the ice bath once or twice a week in a cold plunge. That's already 36 degrees, circulating cold. So there's no ambient temperature that warms up. This is hard. I get in and I'm thinking, I do not want to do this. It never gets easier. It never gets easier. But there's something that happens on the other side of that. I feel warmth. I know what real warmth feels like. When's the last time you just really appreciated being warm? Most people get cold. They just put on a jacket. They put on the heater.
Yeah.
This is kind of my message is go earn that shit. And maybe it's over the top from the physical standpoint. But when you're in that cold plunge, if you're just there physically, you don't exist in there. Like what is required of you to get in that cold plunge and to stay in that cold plunge, this is not an easy thing to do. I love inviting people over to see if they can do this thing. And you normally got about 5 or 10 seconds in there. It takes a special sort of commitment. So I think in summary, I was like, yes, earn that shit. When you earn it, everything is better in life. That background is better. You're a more robust, more resilient being, and so I do think that there's a relative ease, not to do the same thing over and over. This is maybe where you and I differ, because I talk about doing Barbarian training on every Saturday, because this is the hardest thing that I do all week. And everything else in the week can be performed with relative ease. When I have a tough conversation coming up, I'm like, oh, this is easy. I just trained Barbarian is the hardest thing that I have to do. And now I have a tough conversation coming up. Oh, this is easy. Or getting in the cold plunge, like, what would I rather do? These are totally different things, but I'm like, man, I just trained Super Barbarian. I can get in this cold plunge. I can do anything. So it puts me in a certain sort of momentum, creates that winning mindset, the growth mindset. And like I said, everything tastes better. It looks better. It feels better. And it is all these things because life is better. When you earn it, when you pay that price, life is better.
I think what you're describing is contrast, right? You're creating contrast, and you're creating contrast with something difficult. And if you consciously are thinking about how the next thing is with relative ease, then that absolutely makes sense, because you're living, you're almost interval training your life, so to speak. You are putting your life into a form of high intensity interval training in a way. You go through these periods and there's going to be, who doesn't step onto a treadmill doing some HIIT or run outside doing some HIIT? And who does not embrace that rest period between the next blast, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about coming into the present, right? Any person that has ever done HIIT will realize that, and they don't necessarily comprehend it at the time, but now maybe even watching this video, they're thinking, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that is what life can feel like. And you're describing that contrast, and that's exactly it. If you set forth these periods to make things hard, then things become easier at other times. Whether you want to be aware of it or not, you are an aware individual. So I think that you're aware of it. A lot of people haven't reached that level of awareness, really. They haven't had that peak awareness where maybe they're able to realize something, some actual minute task is easier. They might feel like, oh, I'm getting through life easier, but they're not able to necessarily register specific things at one specific time until they do it for a while. And it's not even necessarily doing it for a while. It's about being able to stop and think about it and be like, appreciate it, appreciate how something got easier, and then appreciate how something is difficult and be able to appreciate that more. And, we could go down this rabbit hole forever on that. But speaking of like your training, your, Barbarian training, this intense training, I know you try to simulate hunts as much as possible, and you just go through life simulation, like hard life simulation. Can you kind of walk me through what that looks like? Because I just want everyone to hear it. I think it's totally awesome.
This whole thing started because I wanted to do something more difficult, something that was more ancestral. And I wanted to create a rite of passage for people that hadn't been through the hardest thing that they've ever been through. I wanted to have something that was the most challenging thing that they've ever been through physically, mentally, emotionally. And it is a spiritual journey when you do Barbarian. When you go out and do Barbarian, this is a wearable weight workout. Super Barbarian is a much tougher thing to do, but most people will just do Barbarian. It's 70-pound kettlebells in each hand for the men. It's 70 pounds in a backpack. It's 120 pounds on top of a sled, and it's 20-pound ankle weights for 1 mile. And so you go out and you do this thing on your own. You're not supposed to have a crowd cheering you by. You go out and you figure this out and you piece how you're going to do this. And most people, there's a lot of people that don't finish it. But this is a several-hour workout. And so the first time I did it, I was like, oh, this scared the shit out of me. I left and I didn't know if I was going to come back. I didn't know if I could finish it. I didn't know if I could finish it. And so I'm thinking, what's going to happen? I've never given up on a workout like that before. So it scared the shit out of me. And I knew this would scare the shit out of other people. And so this is what I try to incorporate in my workouts, is just carrying really heavy stuff. I like to do carcass carries. I make sure to always do some sort of simulated hunt before I actually eat. So, I mean, if like, let's just say I plan on doing a workout when we're done before I have dinner, but let's just say dinner's ready and it's well, my wife and everybody knows that Liver King's going to go do something to earn it. I'm going to do something that's similar to what food wasn't just readily available unless we had huge game like a woolly mammoth that we could have just sliced up, every once in a while. We probably just didn't have food readily available. The modern day primitive culture tribes, they don't have food readily available. They're going out on hunts. They're working for it. They're earning it. And so this is what I try and get done every day. I like to incorporate just odd objects. I like to be in nature. I like to do handstand push-ups on trees. This is always an interesting thing when you have your head coming down on pine cones or you have your hands in pine cones. It adds a different element to it, but it always incorporates like something really heavy and then something that's really going to be taxing neurologically and to build capacity and to build stamina. And I try and look and say, okay, is this workout that I'm designing today, is this really going to get me better? Is this going to help me build the body and the physique and the strength and the explosivity that I want? Because I used to just follow CrossFit programming, and I'd say, okay, there's a lot of double unders in here. What are double unders going to do for me? And who knows, maybe if I've done them longer, maybe I would have finally built the calves that I've always wanted. But I said, you know what, double unders aren't my thing. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to replace that with cleans or getting on the rower or something like this. So my approach, I do work out twice a day, almost every day. And when it comes to rest days, I at least work out once a day. And that workout on those rest days, these are my fasting days, usually Wednesday and Saturday, are my fasting days where I just fast 24 hours. But before I eat, I make sure to always do a simulated successful hunt. So I'm always going to earn it, whether it's Tabata push-ups or a kettlebell swing followed by a carcass carry, something that's going to get me sort of honoring the struggle of our early ancestors. I would say it's honoring your own genetic fitness. So I try and do something that would kind of simulate the sprint towards an animal and then carrying that animal back.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And when you look at the idea behind fasting, one of the things that I've implemented just in the last 6-7 months, it might be kind of interesting. And this is kind of cool just from a cellular level. When you are not eating, that has now become my favorite time to place my muscles under moderate load. And here's just an interesting thing that I'm just sharing with you that I've been learning. From a what is relevant standpoint, the muscle is going to, the body in general, is going to try to preserve whatever is relevant at that point in time. Okay. So for instance, if you're fasting, if you were, and I know this is not you, you're not sitting on your ass, but if you were fasting and just sitting on your ass, the body is going to go catabolic in one way or another. It's going to try to break something down. It's going to break down whatever is not relevant at that point in time out of pure necessity. Okay. This person is not using their muscles. So let's go ahead and let's start breaking down their muscles. So people ask me, Thomas, you train like an animal when you're fasted. Like, what is up with that? I'm like, well, my thought process behind it is twofold. One, it's I'm going to put in my best work when I'm fasting. Okay, because just from an ancestral way of looking at things, mentally, what happens? You get laser focused. You might have a relative, a physiological decrease in your performance, but it is so negligible compared to the override you get from your brain, right? most of the time we hit capacity, it's because of our brain, not because of our body. Let's face it, right? So even if in vitro, you were to say, okay, well, cellularly, you're not able to create as much output. You're not able to create as much ATP through this training when you are fasted. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. That is on paper. But what I'm able to potentially override mentally will supersede that tremendously. And that's my way of thinking, right? I get more out of a fasted workout because my head overpowers my body, period. And the other thing that I notice is I retain muscle if I lift when I'm fasted. And this is, I know you rest on your fasting days, and it's not to discount that. I'm not suggesting that. I'm sharing some cool knowledge that I've learned is if I go and I do a moderate to high intensity workout in a fasted state, I actually retain more muscle than if I don't. And it makes sense because now I'm thinking, okay, the body is trying to preserve whatever is important. If I'm in a starvation state and my body says, oh, this guy's using his muscle, we better make sure that we preserve it because clearly it's key to his survival. So we're going to make sure we don't burn that, but we're going to go burn that fat instead. And that's when it clicked with me like 6 months ago that, wow, when I started taking my fasting days and making sure that I did some kind of, like for me, I'll do BFR training or something where I'm putting the muscle under a different kind of load and just have fun with it. All of a sudden it was like gains started happening again. And it's pretty wild.
I think there's a lot of science behind, what you just shared from an evolutionary standpoint, right? The anthropological standpoint. Again, food wasn't just available. You had to go work for it, which means that you went and did the work in a fasted state and then you would feed. And so I think this is very important. And I do the same thing. We can define fasting all different, types of ways. It's funny how people talk about fasting today. I'm like, well, when did you have your last meal? And really, they just skipped a meal, I believe the biological law of accommodation, where if you do the same thing over and over again, physically, mentally, whatever it is, you're going to cease to make adaptations. You're going to cease to grow. And again, we know this in the gym, but the same thing happens from an eating standpoint. And so this is why I have these fasted periods, and it's a 24-hour fast every Wednesday, every Sunday. But then I fast for 5 days, once a quarter. And so I think it's enough to kind of tell my body, hey, you don't really know what's coming. But I make sure every morning I'm working out I'm fasted. I had my last meal maybe at 4 or 5 p.m. And so now it's been 12, 13, 14 hours since I worked out. And so I've always seen better results like that. And it wasn't really because of any of the science, because maybe your growth hormone is elevated or maybe you're going to use fat for fuel instead of some other substrate. For me, it's just been what's evolutionarily consistent. And when you go out and you see these primitive culture tribes work like this, it's like, well, this is what they did. You had to work before you had the reward. You had to earn it before you got that reward. And so I've seen the same thing. When I started living all of these 9 ancestral tenets, I had been working out since before 10 years old. I'd been working out in grade school. And then in my mid-20s, I thought I looked great. I thought I was performing pretty good. And I learned about CrossFit and I started going hard doing these CrossFit workouts. And by the way, CrossFit was so hard. I mean, I would see Rich Froning do these things on TV, and I went to my gym and I tried to do overhead squats, and I didn't have the mobility or anything to do any of this stuff. But you know what? It wasn't really until practicing all 9 ancestral tenets that I really, truly realized my potential, what I could become. The 45-year-old version of me is kicking, the 25-year-old version of me, he's kicking that guy's ass. He's way stronger than that guy. So when people talk about, oh, you shouldn't peak, as you get older, well, who says that? Who says that? Who says you shouldn't peak as you get older? And are we looking at hormone studies from the modern man? Because you can look, not that long ago, 50 years ago, and we had double the testosterone, and what was it 100 years ago, 200 years ago? So I think that you can make a case, all 9 ancestral tenets impact hormone optimization, all 9 of them. And so having said that, I just think that fasting it's evolutionarily consistent. And I know a lot of people eat a banana or protein shake or whatever it is. I'm going to go catabolic if I don't eat. I used to think the same thing. And it wasn't actually until I had this like freak accident and I had severed an artery trying to save a protein shake of all things. And this glass smashed in my hands. Yes. And then I started doing research, like what are all the things I can do to get better faster? And I had learned that Herschel Walker was eating once a day. And I said, how is this beast of a man eating? And this is not possible, right? This means like you're going to go 24 hours without eating. And so I tried this like 15 years ago and I loved it. It was weird. It was really strange at first because I guess to get over it mentally. And again, everyone tells you, and you think the same thing, you're going to disappear. You're going to lose strength. You're going to lose weight. But man, I felt incredible doing it. I saw myself get leaner. I saw my strength go up, and when I do a 5-day fast, it takes me probably 2 or 3 weeks to recover from that fully. But once I've recovered, I'm getting stronger and I'm getting better. And so I think that these things, again, are evolutionarily consistent with the way that we've lived our life to be these baddest mammalian predators that ever lived. We've stopped doing these things. I do think it's really important when the second ancestral tenet is eat. But it's not just about eating nose to tail. It's not just about cutting out the processed food and incorporating the liver and the bone marrow, right? It's about when you don't eat. It's about honoring these feast and famine cycles. And it's so tough for me to convince people to do this thing, And so again, once you've started eating, cutting out some of the crap, the liquid calories, the processed food, and now you've let liver in, I'm like, okay, now we can sort of move on a little bit. But yeah, I generally don't tell people to start with fasting. They think I'm crazy if I do, but it's so easy to start with liver. But you and I, we're absolutely on the same, the science behind the fasting. I know the evolutionary ways about, or why we would do it. So we're definitely on the same page with that.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it though, because it's without even looking at the science, you nailed it. Because one of the things that I really, really try to drive home with people, and I try to say it in as many videos as possible, because we got to love wonderful algorithms that make sure that people don't see every piece of content we want them to see. So I try to drive it home, is that fasting should remain the anomaly. And that's what the problem that we run into. Not that there's anything wrong with like a 16-8 kind of intermittent fasting. If that works for people, again, if it's working for you and that strategy is making your life better, who am I to rain on that? But I'm a big proponent of letting fasting be the anomaly. Keep your body guessing. Not that you're going to ever really be able to make your body guess. Your body's a lot smarter than what we think. But being able to, what's the difference? If you're fasting every day, you're essentially just putting yourself into caloric restriction, and it's no different than just reducing calories, just like every other kind of, whatever.
This is just like lifting weights. This is just like what we talked about, right? If you lift weights in the same way every day, you no longer need, adaptations. You're no longer going to grow. And so this is the biological law of accommodation. Like the same thing happens the way that we eat. The same thing happens the way that we grow spiritually, and socially. Like we got to stretch ourselves. You got to keep the body sort of guessing. You got to introduce new things in order to grow. So I do think that this is an important thing. Again, I don't tell people to start here. In fact, anyone who asks me where to start, I'm coming back to liver 100% of the time. But yeah, fasting is such a strong metabolic lever. If someone does have a neurological condition or something major going on, I think a 5-day fast is incredible. I've never seen anything more powerful. In fact, myself, if I'm not feeling great, if it's not time for me to do a 5-day fast, I'm doing a 5-day fast. Life's too short to not be feeling your best. So if I do a 5-day fast, I come back from that, maybe one day, 1 or 2, feeling a little bit weird. But right after that, it's like, this is a new me. Yeah. You kind of want to fast every 5 days all the time because you feel so damn good.
Totally.
So, yeah, important stuff.
That's a problem that a lot of people face, is it gets addicting. Absolutely. Fasting is one of these things that, you have to take with a grain of salt. You really do. Because if you end up getting to this point where you're doing a 24-hour fast every other day, well, okay, to a certain degree, what's your nutrient intake look like at that point? Because that's what happens. If you have, stomach distensibility, if you fast so much, your stomach is going to physically shrink, which means that you're not going to be able to accommodate as much in the way of nutrients. You're not going to be able to accommodate as much in the way of protein. There's an interesting thing. Have you heard of what's called G-Flux before? It's a scientific term. So if not, you're probably like 99.999. Okay. Basically G-Flux doesn't just imply, there's really solid evidence behind it, that for the best metabolic optimization that we could possibly have, it is to have as much caloric consumption as we can have with as much movement as we can have. People tend to think that, okay, well, the Okinawans and these blue zones are in caloric restriction. Yes, that is true. And there are absolutely huge benefits to putting yourself in caloric restriction in different mechanisms, fasting, occasional caloric restriction just by eating less for a few days. Yes, but Obviously, if you were to be in a caloric restricted state every single day, you'd end up with a basal metabolic rate of 400 calories per day. So that's obviously not going to work. But G-Flux is like, if you were to say, okay, someone that eats 5,000 calories per day and burns 5,000 calories per day, compare that to someone that eats 2,000 calories per day and burns 2,000 calories per day. On paper, you would say, oh, they're metabolically equal. They're both at equilibrium. They're both at net zero. Incorrect. The person that is actually eating 5,000 calories, but also burning 5,000 calories is actually at a net loss because there is actually a metabolic cost associated with energy exchange within the body. So moving more and eating more is the best outcome. That doesn't mean you go load up with empty calories, but what that means is fast and then eat a lot and move a lot and eat a lot of protein and move a whole freaking lot. And that's not always practical for people that are maybe older and, maybe their health is declining and they can't physically move a lot. So it doesn't apply to everyone, but it's a staple that you can put into your life at a young age and continue on, right? So I try to have periods of time where I don't eat hardly at all. And then I have periods of time where I move a crap ton and I eat a crap ton. And I think by doing that, you're initiating that G-Flux, which is just tremendous for keeping the mitochondria conditioned to utilizing fuel in a very optimal way. And it's pretty interesting stuff that's kind of been coming out in the last year or two.
I think this is the Liver King way. I move a lot and I eat a lot. Yeah. And a lot of people, primals, don't think I eat all that food. Why would I not eat all that food? I mean, the food that I eat, I get double bacon beast burgers that my wife will make with liver, heart, pancreas, spleen, and kidney, and some muscle meat. You throw some amazing cheese on there with some bacon, and I'm going to town and having 5 or 6 of those. The kind of food that we make today, I believe we're having bone-in ribs with some onions and garlic on top. I mean, the foods that we get to eat are so good. And so part of me is like, I really look forward to my meals, but I really have to earn my meals. And then everything tastes way better when I'm eating my meals. So I don't know what my calorie intake is. But what I've always said is, there's so much more to even like this G-Flux idea, that again, it's all 9 ancestral tenets, because we're talking a lot about move and we're talking a lot about eat. But imagine if someone doesn't shield right. Imagine if somebody is constantly surrounded with phytoestrogens and xenoestrogens, and their estrogen is through the roof. And if there's a reciprocal relationship with testosterone and that's lower, you already know what's going to happen from a lean muscle mass standpoint and from a basal metabolic rate standpoint. Every single tenet makes a difference. Every tenet, again, is information that enables us to epigenetically express our highest form. I think we should pay attention to each one. But who doesn't love, if you got good food in your house? I hear a lot of people, a lot of primals say, oh, I don't know about that bone marrow. It's a little bit waxy. Here's the thing. When you eat bone marrow right out of a cow, it's almost 100 degrees and it's soft and it's succulent and it's rich and it's incredible. And so what I try and tell everyone is leave your bone marrow out on the counter for an hour or two, put it in a cup. Maybe you can add a little olive oil, a little bit of maple syrup. But this stuff is absolutely amazing. You should look forward to this kind of food. It shouldn't be like, oh, this is waxy. Maybe you're doing it wrong. But I love the idea, work hard and you get to eat within reason. You get to eat a whole lot. For me, if I notice that I'm getting less ripped, I have less maple syrup. If I notice that I'm getting less swole, I add maple syrup. For me, my lever is carbs. I never change my amount of protein. Again, I don't count my protein, but I know what I'm having every day. I don't ever change my protein, and I don't ever change my amount of fat. These stay the same, and it's whatever exists in nature is the ratio that I have. But I hear so many primals asking about, how you should supplement and what the macros should look like. It's so much more important than that, right? Like, what if someone doesn't have enough vitamin A or vitamin D? There's so many things that go into, again, optimizing who we are. I think it's so important, of course, to nail your macros, but to get it from the right sources. This is not just muscle meat, right? There's so much more information in organs. People aren't talking about the peptides like LEAP2 or hepcidin. And I'm sure you know that LH and FSH, these are in testicles. I always say, who needs vegetables when you have testicles? Man, raw testicles, they're in our house every day. Our kids eat them, we eat them. And there's just so much more to nourishment than just the macros. So obviously the macros are important, but I do think eating nose to tail, if you don't want to get too deep into everything it provides, this is the way we've always evolved. The modern day primitive culture tribes, they go for the organs first. And oftentimes they don't even touch the muscle meat. They're giving the muscle meat to the dogs. No hyperbole. With the Hadza, anything left over, they gave to the dogs. Same with the Machaganga, they gave to the dogs. We started with the muscle meat, and then we were kind of full. And we had the option of taking something off the bone, but we were pretty full by that time. So I do think it's really important that everyone understands that it's not just about movement and calories, that it's about living this whole lifestyle. Imagine if you're sleeping 2 or 3 hours a day. Of course, I just talked about shielding and what that can do to estrogen, but sleep is the first ancestral tenet. I mean, we know how that affects growth hormone and anything downstream and testosterone. If you're not sleeping well, and a lot of people aren't sleeping well, this is obviously going to affect our hormones, right? And ancestral tenet 8 is fight. If you're not fighting, if you don't have something to believe in, I wish there was such thing, and maybe there is. This would be an incredible technology, a continuous testosterone monitor. Yeah. How cool would this be if you could see yourself doing this power pose or in the middle of a workout or fighting for something you really believe in? Or the contrast to that is just kind of like going through the motions, and having your head down and, not really enjoying your day, not fighting for something. This would be very interesting stuff to look at. But I'm convinced that all 9 ancestral tenets, shape the way that we look, feel, and function. I love the concept behind G-Flux, but I do think it's way more important than just how we move and how we eat. I think you'd agree with that too.
100%. Yeah. Just being able to get to a basics of it, being able to move, being able to get the calories in, not by getting in refined carbs, not by getting, obviously you can get nuancy with that. And when you start looking at the macro piece of it, people know that about me. They know I do not give a rat's ass about how many calories you eat in a day. I do at a high level. Obviously, if you are eating a ridiculous amount and you're not moving, that's not good. Okay. But I don't count calories. I listen to my body. I know what I'm moving. I know what my output is. I know what my input is. And when you start breaking down things like, we can get super nuancy about vitamin D, because vitamin D, it drives me crazy because it's clearly an issue that we have in terms of vitamin D deficiency. Clearly an issue that is definitely, in terms of the United States and North America, is a exponentially big problem. And what's the fix? Synthetic vitamin D, which people always ask me in vitamin D videos. I see in the comments it floods. Well, what vitamin D do you recommend? First and foremost, the sun. Secondly, okay, there's going to be a wide variety of different organ meats you can eat. You can also get, good quality eggs. Duck eggs have twice the amount of vitamin D compared to chicken eggs. So factor that in. Did I say sunlight again? Okay, but also just keep in mind things like if you're going to go down the supplementation route, cod liver oil going to be a much better option because you're not going to be depleting your retinol A. When you take a synthetic vitamin D, you deplete your bioavailable retinol A. That is my biggest concern. Synthetic vitamin D in an effort to replace something is actually a bad thing when it comes down to what's available in terms of retinol A in your body. So at least with cod liver oil, you're getting your A, you're getting your D, and same kind of idea with liver, right? So we're speaking the same language on that. And then when it comes down to the muscle meat, it's interesting. I haven't talked about this in a while. There was some research that actually backed that up. It was like, this muscle meat is super rich in methionine, and methionine being the one amino that if you overdo the methionine and you have this skewed ratio, can actually be detrimental for the body. It's harder for the liver. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because this isn't exactly positioned in any kind of marketing collateral towards that, but it's a very interesting piece that, overconsumption of actual muscle meat can lead to a surplus of methionine, which has its own problems. And then just to echo you on the sleep, that's probably my biggest pillar that I really try to pivot people back to. And it's just, okay, how is this affecting your sleep? Okay, I'm eating XYZ or I'm doing XYZ. Okay, I don't care. How's it affecting your sleep? Because that is the biggest lever that you can pull. How you get there, a lot of different ways. You have your ways, I have my ways. Different people have different ways, however you want to get there. The bottom line is, I agree. I think that is the biggest lever that you can pull, because that is the one time where your body gets to go back to its innate systems without your subconscious coming to the surface and dictating what you should do. You're going back to the innate, you're going back to your sleeping. This is your body's time to do what it needs to do without all the noise coming from your conscious brain. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, this is why, these are our ancestral ways. This is how we live our highest and our most dominant form. I get questions, how do I get big? And I'm like, this is not the right question. It's how do I express my highest and most dominant form? And yeah, I 100% agree that sleep is the biggest lever. A lot of people aren't willing to do what it takes for that to happen. So I always 100% of the time come back to liver. Hey, let's start with liver. If you're already on liver, then we can start talking about other really easy things that you can do. But sleep is number one for a reason, because it's the biggest lever. And most people aren't doing it right. Most people may be spending that amount of time in bed, but there's so many other things that they can be doing to optimize their sleep. Just a few things that I talk about is, make sure that you get early morning sun at the same time every single day. And I'm sure that you know why. I talk about finishing your last meal 3 to 4 hours before bed. And this is how all primitive culture tribes do it as well. I talk about turning off your Wi-Fi at night. You don't need your Wi-Fi at night. Put this on a timer. You're not using your Wi-Fi while you're sleeping. And you may say, hey, there's no evidence, to say this, that, or the other. But once again, our cells are signaling to one another. They signal to one another to organize, to create tissue, and tissues will organize to create organs, and organs organize to create us. And so if there's any ability to interrupt that cell signaling, which there's some evidence to suggest that there is, but you know what? Let's pretend that there's no evidence. Why not just hedge? Why not just hedge? Yeah. Put that on a timer. See if that makes a difference. Some experts have suggested that it doesn't enable us to get in that deepest parasympathetic state that we should be getting in to really get that deepest restorative recovery and sleep. Same thing with a cell phone. Just put it on airplane mode, right? I mean, I think some of the carriers say that you're supposed to keep it a few centimeters away from your ear, and most people actually have it in their pocket or have it right next to them. Again, you're not using this while you're sleeping. The last thing that I talk about is to take in the sunset, and what a great feeling this is when you take in the sunset. After dinner, my wife and I, Liver Queen, go on a walk. We're in our bare feet, we're holding hands, and we're talking about the day. And this helps us to really relax, but I think that there's something with the sun setting that it really enables. This is the final environmental cue that says, hey, the day's winding down. And I do wear UVX glasses at night because I will find we have only incandescent lights in our house, but there will be incandescent lights on because we're still doing things. So I'll put the UVX glasses on so my brain doesn't think it's daytime all over again. I'm sure that there's 20 or more things that we can do for sleep, but these are some basic things that I think a lot of us can do that a lot of us aren't doing right. And I agree, I'm 100% with you. This is probably the biggest lever that enables us to express a higher form.
Yeah, it's you just mentioned something that Dr. Andrew Huberman has been talking about recently, which is taking in the sunset. And I need to go back and watch the full thing in entirety. But basically, I mean, he comes down to there's certain light waves at a certain, basically at that tone that actually do trigger other effects within the body outside of just things that are going to obviously affect serotonin and melatonin. So really interesting stuff. Not to mention just
very consistent with how we lived, right? This is how all primitive culture tribes do it. They're not doing it because Liver King says to do it. This is how they do it. And then once we saw them do it, I think off a first principle, you could say, okay, some of this makes sense. But when you see all them doing it like this, and everybody's sleeping on the ground, nobody has a bed. I mean, they might have a 1-inch, mat made out of palm or something like that. But I love that. There is a deficit here, and we have experts like you and like Andrew Huberman that are talking about this because more of the public mainstream needs to hear there's science behind this. If it's not enough for you to say, okay, I'm going to do it because our early ancestors did it, there's plenty of science here too. So I'm glad that that's starting to come out.
Dude, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because that's exactly what, you do this based on principle. And that's what I love about what you say is you're not coming at it. You're not trying to make you do rope it with science, but you're not sitting here making a scientific claim about it. You're saying that can exist or not, but even if we're hedging for it or against certain things, this is a practical way of living based upon what's been done and what is working successfully for people now and what has worked successfully for people in the past. And that's what I love about it. My whole channel, my whole world is about nuance, right? That's what I catch the most flack for is, okay, Thomas, you're getting so granular with this. We don't need to know that. Well, I get my rocks off on that. I like the nuancy stuff because it's fun for my brain, not because I feel like everyone needs to be counting every single thing and looking at every single thing. If you followed everything that I said, you'd be paralyzed, right? You wouldn't move. Like, okay, he says this, and this does this, and this does that. PPAR alpha, what AMPK, all this stuff. that's just because that's what motivates me. And the people that watch my channel are usually very intrigued. And I always say with education comes adherence. They like that. They like understanding how their body works. This is such a great conversation for so many people because you have this approach of this is just as close to the damn earth as we can possibly get with everything that we do. And then I come at it from this, and here's why this part works. And here's why I'm doing XYZ and where it ties together. So it's just a very interesting conversation.
These primitive culture tribes, we talked about earlier how there's some criticism that our early ancestors died at 25 or 30. This is just all rubbish. It's the way that we're existing today isn't living. I know I said this earlier, but most people's lives suck. Most people are living with depression, anxiety, infertility, autoimmune conditions, low energy, low libido, and low ambition. And most people will tell you there's something not working in my life. I'm looking for something better. These primitive culture tribes have figured it out. They are living the life. They are the happiest, most content, most fulfilled group of people I've ever been around. And they seemingly have no material possessions. I mean, they have like some weapons for the hunt, but they figured this thing out. And so when you go and you spend time with them, it's such a special connection. You got to be thinking, how do I get more of this? And so this is why I think it's just so important, based on first principle, a lot of the 9 ancestral tenets are true. When you go and you live with them, it's just an incredible feeling. These are the guys that are really living it. And I'm sure that you've heard this as well. And you know this, if you take out infant mortality, if you take out adolescent accidents, our early ancestors would have had the same sort of lifespan that we would have had. But the health span, the quality of life is through the roof. The quality of life, there's a chief of the Maasai in his 80s who was trampled by an elephant, has a deformed leg, who's running up and down a mountain. And he's in his 80s and he's jumping, and this guy, he's more mobile than I am. It's remarkable, the energy, the movement that they have, the social interaction they have. There's a special energy, a special electricity, a special chemistry when you're around these tribes. And so this is what I wanted to observe is, what really exists out there. And we've only seen about 5 or 6 tribes. I think it's 6. We're headed to the Arctic next to go hang out with some more tribes. And what I'm hoping to do is expand upon the 9 ancestral tenets, either continue to validate them or expand upon them so that I can bring back new information and so that we can try new stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's really exciting. I think that's what people really enjoy watching about you is, there's, even if they're not applying what you say, I don't want to say entertainment value because that cheapens it, but the intrigue. And just even though there is intrigue there, that is a good sign, right? That is a good sign. And people will have what they have to say always, no matter what category you're in. And that clearly doesn't stop you, which is awesome. You're doing what you are set out to do and living and being your highest, best self. That is how you come home at night and be able to lay your head on the pillow and be able to be with your spouse or your loved ones and be able to give them your all, your sex life, your family life, everything. You can live it with passion. You can sincerely live it with passion. And I think people have lost passion. They really have. I think we've now misconstrued passion. Like we think passion is something completely different. We think passion is an interest. No, not really. You have your interests and you have your passions. Sometimes they overlap, but passion is something that you live with in life, even if it's things you don't necessarily like. It's that guttural response that allows you to do something with fortitude. And that's the big difference between passion and interest. And again, once in a while, passion and interests collide and it's magic and it's euphoria and it's flow, right? And it's just amazing with that. But when you talk about like what is being researched right now, and people have this common misconception, once again, aging research, longevity research, they think that it's how do we live as long as possible? No, any kind of a research setting. One of the first things, I just did a video on this, the first thing that people learn, research students learn when they go into the world of longevity and research, it never talks about immortality. It never talks about a specific age. It is always about how do we improve the health span and how do we improve the life quality for people as they get older so that quote unquote aging is no longer this factor as in terms of quality of life. Okay. There's always going to be external things that we cannot control. That's part of life. Okay, but maybe based upon some of the research that's being done, aging doesn't need to necessarily be something that influences quality of life. It really does just become a chronological number. And that's what's interesting is the actual research, the actual peer-reviewed research in terms of longevity, even some of the stuff Dr. David Sinclair is talking about, all this stuff actually aligns with a lot of this. And it ends up being flat out, stop trying to live as long as you possibly can, being in a Wall-E chair, like the movie Wall-E, where everyone's just floating around in a people mover. Your quality of life is miserable, but you're living to be 160. That's not living. That is not living. I mean, I guess it literally is living, but it's not fruitfully living. And we've kind of beaten this into the ground. But speaking of fruitfully and fruit, one thing I hadn't seen, I wanted to ask you, because I hear mixed things on this. I have my opinions on. I'm just totally curious your opinion. Do you occasionally have like berries and fruit? Like, is it something, or do you avoid fruit altogether? Like, if you look from an ancestral way, right? If you came across a blackberry bush or something, you might rate it or something, right? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I believe that there's a place for it. In fact, we have an orchard at Liver King Ranch, and there's nothing producing right now. This is how I know that it's hyper local and in season. If it's at my orchard, I'm going to have some. And so you're going to see more on the menu coming up here, maybe even this month or next month. The Hudza, when they found the honeycomb, they had the most incredible celebration. When they found this honey nest, this was the best thing. And yes, this is not fruit, but still, it's sweet and it's delicious and it's nutritious. And so I do think that there's a place for fruit. I don't make a conscious effort to have fruit year round. If it's growing in our orchard, especially if I can pull it off, like, this is incredible. So I do think that there's a place for fruit. And again, I think that it's a whole lot more important than just saying, that there's sugars involved. I was having some fruit, and somebody was over here and he was like, "Hey, are you sure you want to do that?" And I was like, "Hey, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? I'm just going to hedge a little bit. I want to have this fruit. I'm going to have some of this fruit." So I do think that there's a time and a place for fruit. I don't have a lot of fruit, but I do have some.
Yeah, we're liking that. I went for a long time really naysaying fruit, really being, pulling a lot of research on fructose being a problem and this and that. And then I kind of came full circle when I realized, okay, after you look at the research, yeah, a certain amount obviously can still work within the body when you're talking hyper concentrated amounts, and especially with high fructose corn syrup, all these things where, yes, okay, there's going to be issues with direct portal vein, it goes straight into the liver. That's a problem. You can only handle so much at a given time. But yeah, I look at it like that too. And again, me being nuancey, I look at it from an insulin spike perspective. I'm like, okay, I would rather indulge on a higher fructose content fruit that's going to keep insulin levels relatively low at the end of a fast than the contrary of a refined starch that's going to send my glucose to the roof. It's like, what is somewhat realistic? Again, I always attenuate my fruit glucose response with protein, right? I mean, again, if I get granular with that, really cool evidence that protein first attenuates the glucose response 2x more than even fat does. So fat attenuates a glucose response pretty significantly. Protein attenuates it twice that of fat. So if I'm going to have fruit, it's just a general rule that fruit is not going in my body without some protein alongside it, period. And again, that may not be totally ancestral, right? Like if you come across some fruit and you want to have a couple berries, maybe that's practical. But if I'm going to have some berries and I'm going to have a cup of blackberries or a cup of something that's local and in season, yeah, I'm usually going to have some chicken along with it, or I'm going to have a steak along with it, something to sort of nullify that huge glucose spike that might come with that from an insulin sensitive individual as myself, someone that's fasting a lot, someone that's doing lower carb. A cup of fruit is going to send my glucose spiking high because I'm not someone that consumes a high amount of carbohydrates. So I'm so sensitive to that. So it's kind of interesting. Stuff I've been noodling on lately.
And the primitive culture tribes, they had no fruit when I was out there with them. I did ask about it, and there's certain bushes that they're looking for, and they are looking for some of these berries. And I think the baobab tree also bears a fruit that they enjoy to eat. But this is very much an afterthought after the hunt. If they have not been successful in the hunt, now they're looking at some foraging and some survival foods. And so if I saw them devouring foods, and this really opened my eyes on honey, the way that the Hudza were about honey, I thought, okay, you know what? Like, maybe I'm going to have some more honey in my life. But not one of the primitive culture tribes was going out seeking fruit, or did I see them eating fruit? But I did ask these questions, and I did see some of the Maasai go after some plants, and I was really interested. I was like, oh, here we go. We're going to have some vegetables, but they use it for medicinal reasons. And so the animal unequivocally is anchored in the central of what they do, and the centerpiece of what they do. And so it's like fruit really is an afterthought. So it's nice to kind of see that. I hope to see a whole lot more as we continue on with the journey, but I'm not vehemently opposed to it. I'm also not vehemently, hey, let's get it in. I don't have it very often, but like I said, if it's at the orchard, I'm going to eat it. I know that it's local and it's pretty delicious. So yeah, that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. And I'm like very curious, when you get into like the Pacific Island cultures and things like that, where, coconut becomes a little bit more of a staple and things like that. Some of these potential tree nuts, because, obviously things like a cashew, like essentially toxic if you were not to roast it. So that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that people would just be going out and eating cashews because they probably end up very sick. It's erythritol. It's essentially the same kind of toxin that's in poison oak. So they probably learned that very quick. But then you look at some cultures where probably like indigenous to like Hawaii. Okay, macadamia nuts are very popular there, very big, right? Was that something that it'd be very interesting as that time comes. I'd be curious to see what comes out of that, because I would imagine right now, and I'm asking you this as a question too. Nuts and seeds, what, probably occasionally, maybe hardly at all. What have you seen?
Don't want to have them every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. It's in the Liver King bar. I have some almond butter that's in the Liver King bar, and I love how it tastes. Yeah. And I also look at, where am I getting my vitamin E from?
True.
I got my fat solubles, I think, pretty dialed in. I get lots of A. I have almost a pound of liver every single day. So I get lots, probably more A than what I need. I get lots of vitamin D from the sun. And then my vitamin K, I think it's just kind of naturally baked into all the things that I eat. I have a lot of bone marrow, so I think I get a lot of the MK4 variety. But I think organ meats just generally probably have a decent amount of K. But then I thought one day, I was like, hey, how's my E? How am I doing on E? And so I thought, you know what, I have some I eat avocados. And then I have some olive oil. And I thought, you know what, I love almond butter. And so I made the Liver King bar with almond butter. And so I'm like, okay, I kind of justify it. Like, I'm going to eat this delicious bar with almond butter, partially because I'm able to top off my fat soluble vitamins. So this is how I justify it. I do have some nuts. There's probably not a whole lot of other primitive culture learnings from that, but I love how they taste, and I don't think it's hurting me. I think the overwhelming amount of omega-3s and the healthier fats that I get in my diet, I think, you know what, a little bit of, and it's not much. Like, a little bit of almond butter is delicious. I think there's a huge net benefit to it. And so if there's evolutionarily consistent that we would have had a couple of nuts here and there, then I'm like, okay, cool, I'm covered.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And when you look at, that's in line with a lot of the research too, with, omega-6s, I think there's been so much demonization surrounding like even a fraction of an amount of omega-6s that it's incorrect, right? It is all about the ratio. That's not anything new. And, having omega-6s in your diet isn't necessarily or inherently bad. It's all about what are we consuming, right? When we're consuming a 20-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, that's a problem. Any way you skew it, right? Any way you turn it. It doesn't matter if you had 5 tablespoons of almond butter and a fraction of a percent of omega-3s, or you had 500 tablespoons of almond. It's all about the ratio there. And we're in line with that, because when you look at even how omega-6s contribute to the anti-inflammatory response, not just the inflammatory response, you're essentially reduced down to arachidonic acid, which plays a role in eicosapentaenoic acid and like kind of whole fermentation process to DHA anyway. So a small amount of omega-6s I'm in line with. I find I can quickly tell if I overdo it on the nuts or I overdo it on the omega-6s. I feel it. I actually feel it, not just digestively, but I feel more inflamed. I feel that difference. Other people may not notice that. You probably would notice that, right? Because it'd be so different from what you're accustomed to. But I think that's really good news, especially for people here on my channel, because there's so much conflicting stuff where, like, if you touch a nut, it's over for you. It's done. The phytates, oxalates are going to, it also comes down to, in my opinion, the occasional oxalate consumption that might come in from a nut. Again, that's a pretty small amount. Perhaps that's also a hormetic stressor for the microbiome in a small degree, right? Occasionally eating things that may be toxic because they're oxalate rich or phytate rich doesn't mean you overwhelm your diet with them, but allowing the body to acclimate to a tiny bit of these stressors, making you more resilient, because, okay, you don't want to be in a situation where you have a peanut and keel over dead. That would make you a pretty weak person, right? So being able to, that's the way that I try to look at it, and then take what we know with modern science and weave that in, of course.
Nut butters are pretty goddamn delicious, right? So
Agreed.
I'm
Yeah.
keeping it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, man. And I mean, that was awesome. Just being able to hear the fruit, hear the nut side of things, because I think people look, okay, they look direct carnivore. Okay, do I just only eat this? And one of the things, and we can wrap it up soon, but you and I definitely are aligned on the fermented foods piece as far as like the dairy is concerned. I created a video and I talked about, hey, I would be adding fermented dairy. I didn't realize, I hadn't seen in any of your content. And again, I probably just didn't see it, that you were consuming fermented dairy. So that's awesome, because I suggest that. It's like, he eats a lot of fermented stuff. He eats the salsa, he eats garlic, onion, like these bang for the buck. As far as bang for the buck with prebiotic fibers, you're nailing the ones that I would say are the most bang for the buck. So I had critiqued and said I would add some fermented dairy because there's some really solid literature there. And you told me, you can just tell me what you told me.
Yeah, well, we have dairy cows out at the ranch, so we get some milk and we make fermented. Well, we make yogurt out of it. So I have yogurt every day. Anyone who watches the stories will see that I have a dinner post, and on the dinner post, I show what I eat every single day. And I have what I call a Liver King concoction, which is basically a Liver King bar that has some almond butter. It has some duck fat, some ghee, some other things like that in there, which is delicious. And then it's right next to my yogurt. And then I have 15 grams of maple syrup, with it. And this is like, it's incredible tasting. Yeah. So every single day, I say we, it's pretty much me. My family will have some of that. They're starting to have more, but I do have fermented dairy every day as well.
Yeah, man. It's like the research on kefir specifically is mind blowing. Like, it really is. And it's,
how so?
It's as far as what is actually demonstrated to have a legitimate probiotic effect it's kefir and yogurt, and kefir is about twice that as a yogurt. So so legally, and I say that with air quotes because we know it's kind of weird that you even have, but there's not a lot of documentation surrounding things like kombucha and things like that, surrounding it actually being legitimately probiotic. Are they actually additive? Are they actually contributing to the gut microbiome in any way? And it's hard to pull that research. Believe it or not, there's barely any research on kombucha. That's what's kind of funny, is that whole industry was kind of built on hey, this is fermented, so it's probably going to work, without a lot of research. Now the research is starting to come out. We're like, well, there's not a ton happening with kombucha. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it doesn't. But from a FDA, FTC compliance side, it can't be marketed as a probiotic, really. Whereas there's been a lot of, probably because there's been lobbyists that lobby for dairy, and that's probably why more of the research is out on dairy. And we have to get that out on the table, right? Like, where there's some money, there's probably more lobbying for, and possibly more research. So plain and simple, that could be the case. That's not to say that fermented veggies, other fermented foods, sauerkraut has some interesting benefits. Kimchi has a world of benefits, but the benefits from the kimchi arguably come from the fact that there's garlic and onion and things like that in kimchi, rather than just the fermented cruciferous, right? So interesting. With the kefir, it's like documented. Okay, this is additive. There is actually a change in gut microbiome makeup after consumption of kefir. So it's pretty interesting. And then I don't know, do you mess around with like kimchi at all? Do you make any kind of kimchi?
We don't make the kimchi, but we do eat kimchi. We get it from a farm, and it's delicious. We love how it tastes.
Yeah, kimchi is, again, it's just like, as far as what's interesting is there was an interesting study that took a look at like two different kinds of kimchi. It was taking a look at like a Korean kimchi, and I can't remember the other one, but basically two different kinds of kimchi with slightly different makeups. Like, one had garlic, onion, another one had some other, I don't remember specifically what was in it. But we're like, okay, but the primary constituent was still the cabbage, right? It was still that main radish and cabbage. They're like, okay, well, let's see what happens here. Radically different changes in the gut microbiome, both positive changes, but radically different in the species, which is telling us like, okay, great. There is some kind of interesting effect here, but it's probably dictated by the types of prebiotics in there, not by the fermented cabbage or the fermented radish. That's what makes kimchi so unique. And one of the things that I've been testing out recently is just, I rotate my kimchis. I try different kimchis with different spices and different things, because if the literature is correct, where having a diverse microbiome, which doesn't necessarily constitute eating a bunch of plants, by the way. Diverse microbiome can come from people that are on carnivore too. But the research is saying, okay, diverse microbiome is associated with a lot of positive things. Okay, if that is the case, then I want to rotate my kimchis. I want to change them out so that I'm getting different fermentable fibers and different fermentable prebiotics that are giving me potentially different effects with different strains. Again, I mean, I'm an N=1 experiment on it, right? But it's just, for me, trying to live my best self. Plus, it's fun, right? I like the challenge of, going to new markets and finding different things and finding different kimchis and stuff like that in that case. but yeah, and just being able to make it, right? If you learn how to make kimchi, then you're in charge of that. Then you can, can add some cayenne or whatever you want to do.
There was a time when I was so obsessed with kimchi. I would have it with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I thought it was great. And this is before I had talked to someone who was really savvy with a K2 literature, and she had told me, "Hey, you're going overboard on the MK7." And I didn't know anything about this. Like this was probably 10 years ago, and I don't know if it was quite 10 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. And so I'm having kimchi with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and my teeth started to get sensitive. Mm. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And my wife is a dentist. She's retired now, but I'm like, hey, what's happening here? And she's like, I think it might be the acidity of the kimchi. And if it's not the acidity, you might have some nutrient inhibition from having this with every fucking meal. She's like, stop eating this with every meal. And so I stopped, and within about 3 or 4 days, it went away. This is an important thing, to not eat the same things with every meal. There's a lot of people, a lot of primals that ask, about the egg yolks, eating my raw eggs every day. And a lot of primals are concerned about the avidin and the egg whites. And I'm like, you know what? I think that it's evolutionarily consistent to come across an egg and to eat the whole thing. I don't think we would have discarded the egg yolks. I think we would have had the whole thing. I'm okay doing that. I predominantly do that with my first meal. And I'm not incorporating a whole lot of those fertilized raw eggs with every single meal. So if the avidin thing potentially could be a nutrient inhibitor, could bind to other things, I'm like, I'm covered. I'm having a pretty diverse, group of food, throughout the day. But yeah, the kimchi is so delicious. I went way overboard with it, and I created some issues, from it. So I think that's important, and that kind of goes with anything. Let's just pay attention. Let's pay attention to what's happening. Primitive culture tribes have fermented stuff all the time, and especially the fermented dairy. And we've had a lot of, I think it was like called banana beer. It didn't taste anything like bananas, by the way. The chaga makes this banana beer, and it's a whole host of different fermenting things. The Machaganga gave us something that had been fermenting too, and it turns out a lot of the time that they start this is by chewing it up and spitting it, in a bowl and letting it ferment. And so my kids didn't know that at the time. Had they known that, I don't think they would have enjoyed it or had as much as they had. But ferments are important staples in a lot of these primitive culture tribes. I think it needs to remain in our menu as well.
Plus, it just tastes delicious. I mean, especially some that's an acquired taste for some, but I mean, I think for me, that's a great way to top off just about anything. And yeah, and it's funny. I mean, with the kimchi, I just being wired how I am, I went through a stint too where I was having it just constantly, right? I mean, now it's probably one of those things every other day or so, and I just think it's perfect, And I think just again, you can go extreme on things, but also use your brain. If it's becoming obsessive and extreme and you're just consistently also, and just from an enzyme standpoint of things, I mean, you're going to have a degree of dominance in one side. So your body's going to have to break down and work towards, okay, it's adjusted to having one particular food and you're not getting diversity in your diet. And people think diversity, and use a lot of clarity with diversity. Diversity doesn't mean that you're eating something from every continent. Okay, that doesn't mean that that's not even necessarily practical, right? We have, with the advent of modern logistics, we can get an apple from Japan. That's not necessarily a natural way. And I'm not saying that people need to completely forget that. I get it. Okay. I understand you have to live your life how you live your life. And sometimes, you got to keep it within reason. It can't be extraordinarily expensive. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But when you start looking at diversity doesn't mean I'm going to have an apple, a pear, this, that. I'm going to have that from Africa. I'm going to have this from Canada. That's not how it works. Diversity is about being able to look at your staples, look at the things that you're consuming, and spread them out so that you're not dominant by one, what we would call like a mono diet, where you're just, I like ribeye steak, so I'm only going to eat ribeye steak. I like avocados, so I'm only going to do avocados. That would, in essence, be a ribeye fast or an avocado fast. And maybe for a period of time, there might be some benefit you get. I've done an avocado fast. It'd be interesting. I actually wanted to do a video on okay, what happens if you do an avocado fast? Nothing. You just get sick of avocados. But point is that diversity is just what it sounds like. It's just being able to eat diverse amounts of foods and diverse foods from different organ meats, maybe some muscle meat, some dairy, a little bit of fermented, this and that. It's not what people think.
Yeah. And chiefly, I'm just going to say again, my bias is nose to tail. Right. And if you're putting the animal at the center and you're eating nose to tail, I think you're introducing a lot of diversity. And sometimes you'll get the criticism, oh, I don't know if I can afford to eat that way. Nose to tail foods are a whole lot less expensive than steaks, or a whole lot less expensive than a lot of other proteins. When primals stop eating out and they trade the processed food for a whole foods. A lot of times it's a wash. And so really, I think what I'm hearing is excuses, excuses, excuses. The real primals that lead their life and shape a life that they really want to create, you don't hear these excuses. They go and they try and they'll tell you the same thing. Hey, it's a wash. I can't afford not to eat this way. I feel better and I'm going to do something better with my life. So the diversity thing, early on, I was just eating liver and I just loved liver. And so then I thought, oh, wow, you know what? I'm probably getting way too much vitamin A. I probably need a lot more MK4 in here. So I started eating the bone marrow. And then I thought, you know what? This just doesn't seem right. I'm going to eat the whole animal. So I started eating the whole animal. And, the rest is history. I just think what you said, diversity is really important. We don't have to go and get different things from all these different countries. We can use some common sense and some logic here.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And I think that when caloric density is factored in, people, if they actually look at the nutrient value of what you are getting per calorie with your way of eating right now, living close to the earth is going to provide you more caloric density and nutritional value than what you are probably doing right now. And that's what's interesting, is that it's so easy to think that processed is cheaper, when in reality, if you look at nutrient density, it's not. Like if you're actually trying to nourish your body and you're trying to get yourself the wide spectrum that you need, and you're trying to get that diversity, you're actually spending a ton of money because you're leaving so much on the table. So yeah, that's definitely, I think just overall, just that general theme is awesome. And I know we've been chatting for a while, so I let you get back to your day, but then it would be awesome at some point to meet up with you and train and have you put me through a workout and put my money where my mouth is a little bit. So if you're ever up for that, I'm game.
Would love that. I'm really trying to promote the Barbarian workout, and I've been doing it. I did the Barbarian workout in all these different places in New York City. I did it across the Brooklyn Bridge, and I really want primals to know what this workout feels like. It's measured in steps. It is such a tough thing to do. So anyone who's saying, "Hey, I'd love to do a workout with you," I'm going to bring a Barbarian set. And we're going to get together and we're going to do Barbarian workout. It's going to be a lot of fun. I would love to be able to do that with you. So to be continued.
I live most of the time now up in Tahoe, so it's about 7,000 feet. So how would I bring you out? We do it at 7,000 feet, and and I'll make sure that I'm not acclimated, and I'll make sure that I haven't been there, so we can both acclimate together, and we can just destroy ourselves.
For some reason, I'm not good at altitude. I don't know what it is, but you know what? I'm sure just added challenge to it. When we did it a few weeks ago in New York City, we went from the city to the Brooklyn side. And it was like 90%, 80% uphill. And I had no idea. I didn't walk the bridge. I didn't figure out the logistics. I just showed up to do it. And then afterwards, this is really messes with your mind, because you're thinking, oh, 50% of the time is going to be tough. And then the other 50% of the time, I'm going to go downhill. Like, I'm going to put in the hard work. And I said, who the hell planned this? And somebody kind of sheepishly raised his hand. I'm like, this is how a king does it. What would you say about yourself if you knowingly chose the easy route? And I loved that it went down this way. Barbarian is such an incredible workout to do. It's such an honor to see someone else do it. So I will absolutely, I don't know about doing it at 7,000 feet, especially for someone like me who's at sea level, but we'll figure something out and we'll get it done. Again, I love being able to share this message. I always say that my job in life is I'm the CEO of the Ancestral lifestyle. And I do this because too many people are suffering today. They're struggling with modern day conditions, and they know their life could be better. They know that something is missing. And most people don't know what it is, but there's this simple, elegant solution to living a better, badass, kick-ass life. And I call it ancestral living. These 9 ancestral tenets, 8 of them are free to do. Eat, I believe, is going to be a wash. When you stop eating the processed food, I believe it's going to be a wash. So to be able to share this with you, to talk about this and share this with, I know a lot of the stuff you already know, but to be able to share it in my words with your ecosystem is just an absolute honor. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I appreciate to have the opportunity. And as always, man, thank you.
Always. Liver King out.